Before the war, I was a high school teacher, and I taught for about two years, and then I got a job as an examiner in the Bureau of Civil Service, and my office was very near the National Library, and because I was an avid reader, I would go to the National Library and browse among the books there. And there are always posters there about meetings or forums taking place at different places. And I'm the kind of person who's very interested in discussions. I think discussions stimulate my mind. So I usually went to the Young Women's Christian Association building because they used to have forums there every Thursday, and some of these forums were really intellectually stimulating, and I used to go there because that was perhaps the way I could find out about the world around me. But even before that, I'd been noticing how much injustice and poverty there is around me. I see it every day because I was born in the district of Tondo, where there are slums. I was just lucky that I belong to a middle-class family, and we live under comfortable circumstances. But there is tremendous poverty around me, and this bothered me a lot. And while I was working in the Bureau of Civil Service, I also noticed a great deal of injustice, all sorts of corruption going on there, which I could do nothing about it. I was still young at that time, but we owned a piece of land in Tondo, and my mother usually would collect rent from the people. It's a slum area, and I used to go with my mother to accompany her while she collected the rent. And all around me are these slum areas, cardboard boxes, people living in cardboard boxes, and muddy, squalid places, full of squalor everywhere. And I would go around there and I would think, why are there so many poor people and so very few who are well off or rich? And that bothered me a lot. And there is also a case of my cousin. He's a distant cousin. He lived in the slums, and I used to visit him because we were very close to each other. And he lives in one of these ramshackle nipa huts. He has 4 children at that time, and I used to wonder how he could live there. No sanitation, no home facilities like water. Or he goes to a public toilet, which must be stinking. And I began to wonder how he's able to manage. But there was a great deal of pity within me, but there was nothing I could do. I could just give him a few pesos now and then. That could help him tide over for a day or so. But what happens after that? And I kept thinking about his plight. And then at the same time, I was telling you I was going to these forums. And one day, there was a man who spoke there about the plight of peasants in Central Luzon. His name was Pedro Abad Santos. He was a peasant leader of a union. And what he said there stirred me a great deal. I think I was the one who asked him the most questions. And I did not know that in the audience were some people who belonged to a group called the Philippine Youth Congress. And they seemed to have taken notice of me because after the forum, they approached me and said, would you like to join the Philippine Youth Congress? Oh, we're always talking about these things. And I said, what's it about? So they told me the program, and I said, well, I'll give it a try. Um, I didn't know these people were communists, you see. So I went to the meetings and I became very interested. And all of a sudden, after one meeting, I was nominated as treasurer of the organization. Then when I joined this group, I found that the things they talked about were just the things after my own heart. They were talking about what the government is doing, the plight of the youth, and no attention paid to the youth. There were so many unemployed people, young people who have never had any education whatsoever, and a bleak future for the youth unless we take a militant action for the future of the youth, things like that. Then some of these people who I was working with began to give me literature. And the first book I read that really stirred me, of all things, it's from a clergyman, a religious leader, whose name is Hewlett Johnson. He was, I think, the Bishop of Canterbury from England. You know, the book I read is called 1/6 of the World, and it was about the Soviet Union. To me, that was very interesting because it was the book was written by a clergyman, and yet he talked so favorably of the Soviet Union. For the first time, I read a book that was not anti-Soviet. All the other literature I've read were all against the Soviet Union. It's a totalitarian state, no freedom for the people are regimented. But the book of Hewlett Johnson was the other way around, that people had more freedom, that there was a lot of democracy, that the lot of the poor was being solved, that poverty was being solved in the Soviet Union. And here is a religious man, you know, whom I thought would never talk about socialism. And he did not advocate socialism, but if you read the book, you would think that socialism is much better than capitalism.